Welcome to your NC State Clemson preview presented by Prize Picks. And yes, folks in the Carolinas, you can play Prize Picks now where you are. Use that code STAPLES, play $5, get $50 instantly to play with. And how does Prize Picks work? Well, you're picking squares. You're picking a player attached to a number. They have multiple sports. They have all kinds of different players. We're talking college football here, so we're going to talk about the NC State and Clemson game specifically. And here you have a very interesting game where a true freshman quarterback will be making his first career start at Death Valley. Congratulations, CJ Bailey.
Yeah, put him in a really good position to succeed, I think. But the good news is that no matter what experience that he gets in his first start there, probably would be hard to match a lot of the times that he's playing. So I guess, throw him in there, let him see how things are going. But that's going to definitely have an impact on the squares of Concepcion, who's my favorite last
KJ
name.
Concepcion is probably NC State's best player. And, listen, the folks at Prize Picks, I don't think they're as confident in the Wolfpack as I think the Wolfpack fans maybe are going into this game. Because Clemson's a weird team. I'm just going to throw that out, Ari. They
are a weird team.
Dump truck by Georgia. The same Georgia team that really couldn't score much on Kentucky had no problem scoring on Clemson. And then Clemson comes out and just blowtorches Appalachian State. So I don't know what Clemson is. I don't know what to expect from Cade Klubnik and company either. But I will say that the folks at Prize Picks, they are not particularly confident in old CJ Bailey and KJ Concepcion. So CJ Bailey's passing number is 154.5. And what you do is you pick if he's going to have more than that or less than that. And you pick at least two squares. And the more you pick, the higher the potential payout. So this is not a huge number. This is not unattainable, especially when you have a receiver as good as KJ Concepcion on your team. Like, I feel pretty good about him being able to pull this off and start number one. I get that Clemson's defense is good, but is NC State going to be completely shut down? And also, now NC State got hammered by Tennessee. Tennessee scored 51 points. That included a pick six. Do we think Clemson's offense is as dynamic as Tennessee's? Because I don't.
So here's the thing with Clemson, and this is a really, really hard game to do, Andy, because if Clemson scored 13 points in this game, I wouldn't be shocked by that. And if they scored 50, I wouldn't, because of what we don't really know if they just ran into the Georgia buzzsaw or if they are inherently flawed still on that side of the football. And that they're susceptible to having an offensive performance that is awful. I don't know what to think here, especially considering the fact that NC State hasn't necessarily looked elite, to say the least, against elite level competition. So for me, I think that's a pretty big number that you're looking at for Cade Klubnik. And my actual gut feeling would be less than 256.5 passing yards.
So Tony Gibson's defense. Tony Gibson's the defense coordinator at NC State. The way he's always worked, and he was there at West Virginia for a long time, so he had to play against a lot of really pass-happy offenses in that era of the Big 12 when he was there. He developed a system where essentially he's bringing 3 or he's bringing 7, and he mixes it up pretty much every play. He disguises it pretty well. If you get confused, you're in trouble. Now, Cade Klubnik is a veteran quarterback. He should not be that confused. You saw Nico Iamaleava, who had not had a lot of starts under his belt, didn't have a problem with it. But Cade Klubnik has had issues in his time as Clemson's starter with defenses mixing up coverages and then him accidentally throwing to the wrong team. So that is your scary part there for Klubnik.
But that's a good segue, Andy, to another thing I wanted to talk about in this game, which is Phil Maffa and his rushing total.
I don't worry about him.
There's nothing to worry about with him, and we're talking about an NC State defense that I believe allowed Tennessee's Dylan Sampson to run for 135 or so yards and a few touchdowns. So, for me, I'm far more confident in the output that you're going to get out of Clemson's running back, Phil Maffa, than I am picking more than on Cade Klubnik's passing output.
I will. Okay. I'm glad you said that, because Phil Maffa's rushing number is 98.5 rushing yards. His longest rush square is 22.5. So you could pick one of those. You could also pick the 0.5. There's a goblin number, which is, and the goblin is considered a little bit easier to get. 0.5 rushing and receiving TDs. I believe his demon square on that, the demon higher potential payout, they're harder to get, is 1.5 rushing plus receiving TDs. But like the demon one actually isn't that far-fetched. I will say Phil Mafah is, am I crazy if I say that Phil Mafah is the most consistent offensive player at Clemson since T. Higgins? Will Shipley maybe?
But he wasn't that consistent, was he? I mean, he was great
I feel like
but he wasn't always a dynamic player.
Yeah, I feel like Phil Mafah delivers every time.
And there's a big difference between best and most consistent, right?
Yeah.
So I think that would probably be a fair statement to make for sure.
Well, I like that because there's a lot of unknown here. Like CJ Bailey could come in and just light it up in his first career start. Probably not on the road against Clemson's defense, but you never know. But Phil Mafah feels like a known commodity here. So that one feels good. Obviously, I think Clemson has the edge here because they do have such a good defense. They are playing against a very young quarterback in a very hostile environment. This is when Clemson needs. Clemson needs to establish itself as a power in the ACC again. This is a game I pointed to, way back in the offseason saying this is one that could kind of turn everybody's season. Now, we were thinking a little bit differently in terms of NC State because we didn't think what happened to them against Tennessee would happen. And we didn't think Grayson McCall would be hurt right now. But this is a pretty important moment here for both teams. So for Clemson, you're on the right track if you win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to go get this one. I've been talking that Clemson kind of I have a little bit of Notre Dame brain with them too, of like, okay, well, they got embarrassed by Georgia, but don't write them off in the ACC race or the playoff hunt, especially considering the fact that NC State's without their quarterback. Florida State's kind of a dumpster fire right now, and they don't have to play Louisville or South Carolina until the second half of the season.
They don't have Miami.
Yeah, and that's in the second half of the year too, so they can still figure some stuff out offensively. And then South Carolina, which is always a tough matchup in a rivalry game, is until the season finale. So they do have some runway here to get back on track.
Right. So win this one, and then you got time to get everything exactly the way you want it for a stretch run that could put you in the college football playoff. We'll see if Clemson can pull it off.